who's actually going to get the most out of this Bach Stradivarius Mariachi Series BB trumpet, and who'd be better off spending their budget elsewhere? Is it a wise purchase for the everyday player who just wants a reliable instrument, or does it belong in the hands of someone with a specific sound goal? Those are the questions that keep most people up at night before they click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're standing in a music store trying to decide between a student-grade trumpet and a mid-range model, the biggest fear is ending up with an instrument that sounds great on the demo floor but quickly turns into a hassle at home. The Bach LR19043B Stradivarius Mariachi Series is marketed as a step up from entry-level options, promising a richer tone that's supposed to sit nicely in a Maria band or a jazz combo. But the real test is how it behaves when you're rehearsing for 3 hours, traveling to gigs, or simply practicing in a cramped apartment. First, let's talk about the kind of player who will actually benefit from this trumpet. If you're a serious high school or college student who's already comfortable with a decent beginner instrument and you're looking for a model that can start to handle more demanding repertoire, think lead lines in a Latin ensemble or solo passages in a concert band, this Bach could be a solid upgrade. The instrument's bell is designed to project a warm, rounded sound that blends well in outdoor festivals where a mariachi band might be the centerpiece. That projection is a practical advantage. You won't have to fight for a presence against louder brass or percussion in a live setting. On the other hand, if you're a total beginner who has never taken a private lesson, or if you're only playing casually once a week in a community marching band, you might not extract the most from what the Mariachi series offers. The lacquer finish, while visually appealing, can feel a bit slick under sweaty hands, meaning you'll need to be mindful about grip, especially during long rehearsals. For someone who just wants a plug-and-play instrument with minimal maintenance, a more forgiving student model could be less of a headache. Now, let's dig into the practical strengths that become evident once you bring the trumpet home. The bore size on this Bach is a classic medium-large profile, which gives a fuller sound without requiring extreme breath support. In real-world playing, that translates to a smoother transition between low and high registers, so when you're playing a fast salsa line that jumps from a low G to a high C, the response feels consistent. I've heard players mention that the instrument doesn't choke as easily when they push the dynamics, which is a real benefit for anyone who needs to cut through a brass section. Another strength is the inclusion of a matching mouthpiece that's tuned to the instrument's bore. In many mid-range trumpets, you have to buy a separate mouthpiece to get the best tone, which adds cost and guesswork. Here, the package saves you that step, and for a student or a gigging musician who's on a tight budget, that's a tangible value add. The mouthpiece's cup is deep enough to produce a dark timbre, yet still allows articulation clarity for fast, syncopated passages, a balance that many players chase for years. The trade-offs become clearer when you examine the hidden aspects of a lacquered finish. Unlike a brushed or plated exterior, lacquer can be more susceptible to scratches and wear from frequent handling. If you travel often, especially with the instrument in a standard gig case, you might notice scuffs on the bell after a few months. That's not a functional issue, but it does affect the aesthetic that many buyers consider part of the instrument's overall appeal. Also, lacquer can affect the resonance slightly, damping some of the higher overtones. In practice, you'll hear a smoother, less bright top end, which may be exactly what a mariachi ensemble wants but could be a downside for a jazz player looking for a razor-sharp lead tone. Maintenance-wise, the valve oil flow on this model is fairly generous, meaning the valves stay responsive even after a long session. However, because it's a professional-grade assembly, the cuffs are tighter than those on a student trumpet. If you have smaller hands or aren't used to a snug valve action, there may be a short adjustment period. One practical tip is to give the instrument a light warm-up and a couple of slow scales before a performance. That habit will let the pistons settle into their optimum movement range. The price point is another factor that drives hesitation. At the mid-range level, this Bach sits slightly above many comparable student plus trumpets. For an everyday buyer, the question is whether the tonal benefits and the matched mouthpiece justify spending that extra cash. If you're aiming to avoid the outgrow fast scenario where you have to upgrade again after just a year or two, then the durability of Bach's craftsmanship, combined with the richer sound palette, can